This is a Global Skills Podcast, conversations that shape the future of work and learning. We're exploring how we close the skills gap and build a future where everyone has the chance to thrive. From education to business, connecting people, ideas, and opportunities that drive change. It's about collaboration, curiosity, and creating real impact today. Because every skill learned brings us one step closer to a more inclusive world. The Global Skills Podcast, where learning and opportunity come together. Welcome to the Global Skills Podcast. Tash Wilcocks is a learning designer who helps teams work better together. She mixes creativity, practical thinking, and real-world experience to make learning easier and more meaningful. Through her work at TPX Impact and Hyper Island, she supports people to build confidence, handle change, and improve how they collaborate. Tash brings warmth, clarity, and great energy to every conversation, and no doubt she will do that today. Great to have you on the podcast.
Lovely to be here. I will be warm. You still have to be warm. Really lovely to be here. I'm going to put a little caveat. I no longer work at Hyper Island. I do work with them sometimes. So TPX Impact is the main role. I still have a huge love for Hyper Island. So they do sort of pop up on the radar quite a lot of the time.
Very good. Well, I'm going to start off with, I believe you're the first learning designer we've had on the Global Skills Podcast.
Hello.
Tell us, well, what is a learning designer?
I thought you were going to say the first learning designer ever. A learning designer, I'll be honest, it's one of those titles, and my entire life I've gone through careers where there isn't a title for me. So they just go, what do you want to be called? And when I've been hired for roles, sometimes like we've looked at that and they gone, well, what do you want to be? Which is a very privileged space to be in. So learning design is a little bit what it says on the tin. I look at sort of like organizations or sort of groups of people. I get a brief, or sometimes it'll be like, can you come in and sort of understand what our need is? So we look at it, what's the need of that cohort, that organization? And then I design learning for them. So that could be anything from a 3-hour workshop through to a year-long academy that is made up of masterclasses, workshops, mentoring, coaching, etc., etc., etc. So it's very much like, what is the need? What have we found out? Where do we want to get to as well? What are the outcomes that we're aiming for that cohort? And then, I design around those needs, basically.
How has that role changed now with AI? Like before, did you have to rely on teams and researchers to provide you with the real insights that you needed to develop the curriculum? And are you now leveraging AI, or how has it evolved?
A little bit of a mix, if I'm honest. I'm a pragmatic lover of AI. I think it's awesome. Like, I do use it. I play with it a lot. I've got my own personal one. I've got the organization one. I've got the clients one. So I've got 3 different types. I've forgotten what the Microsoft one's called. Copilot. So I use Copilot, Gemini, and ChatGPT, and everything sort of around the edges as well. I still need the specialists. You know, I only have a certain amount of knowledge in the spaces. So I'm one of those people that I've got a very, very broad knowledge base. I'm very shallow. I don't have that deep dive. Sort of learning design, sort of the learning space is probably my deep dive. But I'm one of those, the key-shaped people where you've got lots and lots. I'm like a really, really long key. And I have a literacy level of quite a lot of subjects. What I do is I pair with an industry expert. So it might be a researcher, it could be an interaction designer, content designer, and they bring the real deep depth of what we need in there. If I asked ChatGPT, I wouldn't be able to sort of like critically go through and go, yeah, that's what the facts are. It does help with loads. Is I tend to sort of go, right, I think this is the shape of, let's say, a workshop, and we're going to do it on content design. This is what I want it to feel like. And I'm a little bit of a team of one sometimes. So I actually work with AI as a little bit of a partner to provoke my thinking. So it's very much me and my experience coming in. Then I go, what do you think? Me and ChatGPT, or me and Gemini shape it together from insights from different things. Then it comes out the other end. It's okay. It's sort of like pretty good. It's learning with me. It does think that humans can do what it seems its timing is awful. It will go, we can do these 32 things in 20 minutes. And then I shape it the other end. So that's one way. I'm going to be aware that I could go on about AI for about a year now. So the other way is I found it really enabling. I am not diagnosed with dyslexia, but if you ever see my writing, you can see it's all over it. My spelling, punctuation, life is too short for punctuation. When I have to do sort of decks, I will write the decks out and then I go, can you put this into plain language for me? And it really tightens it up. I'm also, as you can tell, why use 10 words when you can use 100? I'm verbose. It really shortens me down. So actually writing up the decks has been incredibly useful. So I would say it's those things. It's like having that slight partner has been really useful. I would say that's where it affects students and juniors coming in, because it's probably doing a little bit of the role that somebody who would come in with me, I might be mentoring and going, can you have a look at this? Could you make it shorter? Do I need that person anymore? Because sort of AI is doing that for me. So I think that's, and we'll get into this later, I think that's where AI might be sort of hoovering up some of those spaces where juniors might have sort of come in and they could be billable and, provide real value and learn as they go. I'm just going to leave that there. But there's 100 different ways learning design benefits from AI. What I love about it is it frees me up time to be strategic. It frees me up time to really think about that experience. It frees me up time to be in the space and really sort of like do the actual work and that movement with the people. AI is never going to give that person in the room, and I can't give them confidence, but I can sort of like unwrap the onion that's sort of like wrapped around them. I can do all of that, and it frees me up time to do the stuff that I want to do is really, really important.
I think you've covered so much there. Like if you're an educator listening today, it's great because I think this is where, AI is being rolled out to educators now. And if we even look at higher education, and it's that piece of, well, what do I do with it? Is it going to replace me? No, in your case, it's amplifying, augmenting all the work that you do.
It's a multiplier. It is 100% a multiplier. And I think we need to see that. And I'd love education to see it that way. I think I mentor quite a lot of students, and I've had a really amazing master's dissertation sent to me this week, and I'm going through and sort of feeding back on it. And you can see they've been using AI, but they've not been using it to cheat. They've not been using it to do the work. They've done so much work, but English is their second language. And so if you can, we've spoken about it. They've just used it to tighten up the sort of like the edges. And it's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. But I can see the hard work. They've gone out, done the graft. They've done so many interviews. They've been in industry. They've hit so many walls and critically thought about it. That's work they should be doing. Don't get me wrong. I think writing helps us learn. I'm a huge advocate dissertations for sort of but it doesn't have to be written. It could be, can you draw a picture? Can you do a storyboard? Can you do it in a series of tweets? How do we shake that up the way we get it? So how do you think? How do we work with the way you think? And how do you put that into hands of other people so they can understand it? And that doesn't necessarily need to be a 15,000 word dissertation. It could be a myriad of different things. Podcast.
And it's the human element, isn't it? Because you think about with the Industrial Revolution, we were sort of the mechanics, weren't we? We were the automotive makers. We were the use our hands and repeat the sequence again and again and again. Well, AI can do that. So it's like some of the leaders that are coming on from corporates are talking about that they're at the very beginning of rethinking the whole working model. And it's a whole reset. It's not just a let's adjust because we now have the internet. This is how can we truly value human skills and supercharge? And I think there's going to be this segmentation between companies realizing the potential of the human and augmenting with AI, and then companies that are just going to be left behind. What are your thoughts on that?
I write about this quite a lot of the time. Where I used to work, Hyper Island, was very much about us as humans, how we interact, how we collaborate, how we navigate work as individuals and as teams. And I think it's super, super important as AI's sort of building around us. I think the only way we survive this, that is very grand. The only way we will survive this is being radically human. That's
for this episode, by the way.
is bringing our humanity. Because at the end of the day, our roles or jobs are for other people at the end of the day. I work in sort of public sector and healthcare. There's humans at the other end of that. They are the most important thing. So we have to be humans within the machine. And that goes back to allow it to do what it does. But how do we approach this ethically without bias? How do we create equity? And that's where I think there's a really, really interesting thing here, because I think that's where skills and capabilities and sort of students coming in or people pivoting into this area, they bring this sort of like, number one, they probably have skill sets that most of the people that have been in that organization for years don't have anymore because the whole landscape suddenly shifted. So what makes me, who's been here for 25 years, any more sort of ahead than that person coming in who's probably had as much experience in AI as I have now? So there's this really interesting moment. Like, we could have defeated capitalism in COVID. No, again, grand statement. But, we could have changed society during COVID. It was a pause moment, but we decided to I'm going to sound awful. I'm an awful human. We decided to shop online instead. But imagine now, AI is really disrupting everything. How do we grab this and how do we make it better for humanity? Rather than doom looping into it's going to destroy the world or it's going to save the world. I think that's as dangerous as well. I've written about this. I can share it. Polarity management. I think actually, when I say less mature, I don't mean age, I mean less mature people entering the industry. And when I say industry, I'm talking about creative design, digital, I think if I was coming in now, I would be terrified. I'd be absolutely terrified. The whole world seems to, and again, I keep making huge sweeping statements, but the whole world seems to be polarized at the minute. We're either swinging over here, AI is going to destroy all of us, we'll have no jobs, we're all going to die, to it's going to save us all, it's this sticky plaster that's going to save the world. It could be, politically, we're like that. Globally, look at what's happening. Like in the UK at the minute, it's really scary sometimes to watch the news. How can we help less mature people, and actually most of the people in industry as well, to have that polarity management? And that's to understand there's no wrong or right answer a lot of the time. There's no yes or no. There's no, it's not like that anymore. It's this moment where you have to sort of go, okay, am I going too far this way? What's the dangers? What's the unintended consequences if we do that? Am I flown too far that way? What's the dangers and unintended consequences of that? How do we find this beautiful moment where it's sort of like we just keep nudging sort of each other and sort of like, yeah. And I sort of think if people can come in with that mindset and sort of it's sort of taking that fear out of it, because it's that flight, fight, flop or fawn. Like at the minute, I would probably just go and have a lie down if I was coming into the industry and just go, what's going on? But the industry is beautiful and amazing. But how do we create that sort of like ramp in so that I can't, like, it's not like that where it's this huge step. It's the responsibility of when I come in, is there support? Is there mentoring? What does mentoring look like? Does mentoring need to, it feels quite one way sometimes. My mentoring isn't. I learn as much off them as they learn off me, probably more. Bit like, there's an Inuit word where it's like, it's a word which means teacher and being taught. And that mentality is really important. I think, yeah, how do we get mentoring like that within organizations where the less mature person asks those awkward questions, asks the sort of like, why is it like this? And sort of, and if you answer, do you know what? I am going to name check. Meher came in. She was on our design academy. We ran a year-long design academy. They had a boot camp for 12 weeks, worked as teams, sort of little multidisciplinary teams on a really hard project. Then they went into the organization. Meher worked with me really closely. The amount of times Meher asked me a question, I was like, oh no, I'm the person saying, but that's the way it's always been. And I hate that, but I hadn't even questioned it myself. How do we get these sort of less mature people in who can ask the awkward questions that shakes the organization's shit up, really? I've gone off on a tangent. I'm going to be quiet and let you ask another question.
Well, it was great. So just for the listeners that are on audio, Tash was doing the Infinity 8.
Oh, sorry.
And saying how, but I actually wanted to do it with my fingers because I was watching you, it's nearly hypnotic. In a way, are you trying to define corporate groundness, like to ground ourselves? Like corporates, typically it's about the P&L and the product release and where are we going with the vision of the company. But if we're made up of humans and we're now saying our humans aren't grounded because everyone's in fear, everyone's stressed, everyone's not knowing, touching on skills, what should I reskill in to future-proof my job or to get a job? Or, I mentioned before the episode started, I had the privilege of being with 16, 17-year-old students during the week. And I was able to ask them the question of like, how do you feel about your future? And I remember being asked that question when I was a kid. And I had nerves, but gosh, I couldn't wait. If anything, I was like, how do I get out of the educational system as fast as humanly possible? But there was genuine fear. And the thing is, young people, they're reading the same headlines that we're reading, but we have gone to that maturity. With the maturity to know, okay, I can ground myself and not get carried away with that headline of AI is going to steal the jobs. They can't. So what are your thoughts around that for the younger generation coming through that are feeling the way they're feeling? For educators listening, what else can they do to help people? And maybe not just early talent. What about the mid-careers that have been made redundant?
Yeah. And I do think that there's like especially in our industry at the minute, and sort of, the government changed and there's been redundancies across the board. If you look in America, they closed down the user-centered design sort of team. Like overnight, just went gone. And sort of like, that's quite a scary world to see. So if you're coming through in this industry, you're just like, does my job even exist anymore? And the answer is yes, it'll just wear a different hat. It'll be a different thing. Because in this industry, and I think that's the thing, you heard me say earlier, I don't really care what my title is. It's very much, almost think of it, again, I'm going to sound bad, a little bit like it's just gold stars. Stop worrying about the gold stars on your badge. Start thinking about what is the change I want to make? What's the outcomes I want to see out in this world? And how am I involved in that? And I think that's the thing. If you work in innovation, if you work in digital, if you work in this space, your role will evolve. It's about, and do you know what? You broke my heart. And because you said, I cannot wait to be out of education. And I hear that so much. And I think, what are we doing to our children? We get really excited thinkers who are really imaginative, and then we just shove them into these boxes. Not all of them. I've seen some incredible schools. I've seen, there is a lot of movement and change out there. I've seen wonderful, my sister-in-law was speaking about, so they do empathy lessons and things like that. And I was like, what? And it's beautiful. And they get if they collaborate really well in the class, they get sort of little, and they do get a gold star, good gold star. But it's sort of, let's go back to, I would just sort of dismantle everything if I could. How do we create something where you go through the education system and you don't come out hating learning and going, I never want to learn again. I'm going to go into industry and I never need to learn again. Because we have to love learning. Our entire lives are a learning process. I think people forget. You go into work and you're learning constantly. How do we get that reflective practice of okay, this is what I've done, this is what I've learned, I'm going to share it with others so that we're not always building from scratch. And I think that, funny enough, how can organizations take responsibility for that as well? And that there's a responsibility for organizations to create a learning organization. Where is all the stuff that you've learned as teams over time? Where is it stored? Not in people's heads. People leave. People go, no, I don't want to work here. They fall out with companies, or they just leave because they've got a better role, etc. How do you store that information so it doesn't leave with them? How do we make it more explicit because now we're online and remote, you don't have that natural learning within a studio space. So how does the organization harvest that, curate it? So when somebody comes in, they can go, great, I can access all of that. So you're not constantly getting about up to there and then sliding back.
I think you raise a really good point. Like, there's a lot of companies right now that are being told no more headcount, but let's drive up productivity. And so leaders are feeling the pressure big time to increase revenues, productivity, but with an existing headcount, and thinking, I'm coming out of course quite a bit. We'll just try and automate. We'll try and build an agent there. But actually, if we really think about it, the answer is within the workforce, within the humans that work for you.
Yeah.
Them could be upskilled, reskilled, invested in. Someone said to me over the weekend, actually, I met them, and they said to me that they had stayed 10 years for a company. They're in sort of employee performance, huge organization, massive. And I asked, I said, what kept you there for so long? And he's still there. He'll retire from there. And he said, well, I tell you what, I was always into healing, healing therapies. And they paid for me to go on healing therapy courses so I could become a healer. So when I retired, I'd have another skill. And in return, I've committed to them.
I love that. I love that they're like, but look at the value they've put on that person. That person feels valued. And again, that's radical humanity, like being radically human, understanding that we're more than just our job, that we're, we have kids and cats and other lives, like going kayaking, like how do you, not the private, we don't need to understand the private, but like what's the personal that affects the professional? And I bet, I don't know this person or the role, but I bet he brought the learning from that into the organization. And we go down nerd holes. So like a lot of my role is facilitation. I learned more about facilitation by joining a gym and watching the way they facilitate that room, but also the way they give us like 3 instructions and I'm like, right, got it. And then 2 minutes later, I can't remember what they've said. And now I have real empathy for my participants when I go, has everybody got it? I used to be like, why do they not remember? I just told them 4 times, I've shown them, But actually, you've got so much going on, it just goes, whoop. So there's that empathy there. I sent myself on a competitive yacht racing course, which was very cheap. You can do it. They want you for free to sail yachts. Again, that was scary. I was on the side of a boat learning while doing. And again, I learned loads from that because actually I learned real resilience. And actually, when a very large man is shouting at you and you've forgotten how to tie the rope and you've just ripped a nail off and you're got 1 foot in the water because the boat's like that, it's okay. Like they are not doing that to upset you. They're doing that because we're in a dangerous situation and we physically need to sort of do the boat. So, and I could go on and on and on. I send myself on sort of courses to see what it feels like. And how can you do that in your world? And that's why I love what you just said about there would have been something that just sparked new ways. How can we as humans be like, I'm going to use the word radical again, like be radically curious about the world around us rather than just this tiny view of the world. I used to be a lecturer and we were teaching Flash. By the end of the year, Flash didn't exist anymore. But what we had taught them was how to learn. So when it pivoted to something else, they were like, yeah, I can do that. And you can do that now. And AI, again, helps. Like if I'm learning stuff, I will watch videos. I will get AI to go through it with me. I will go, I can't quite do this bit. And I think it's that. My mantra is just learn how to learn, but also learn how to love learning as well. How do we put that in?
And the whole love learning experience for me, and maybe for many listening, was in the pandemic. I hadn't really had the time, I think, between having kids and a business and just life to stop. And, my assumption was when I finished my higher education, I was like, well, that's as you said, I don't need
done.
But I have loved it. And it's those experiences that have been live as much as I love online. A good example is I went to Poland for an event, and when I arrived in Poland and this particular airport, it was a very grey day, but just the area was quite run down. It just when you come from maybe flying in from a dynamic city and you think, wow, the energy is very different here. But I was attending an event by a neuroscientist called Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I went into the hotel and there was 1,400 people in the room, and the music was playing a bit like Tony Robbins. And I thought, oh, I don't know about this. There's people dancing at the top of the room. And I thought, I don't think I'll be doing that. And I went with a friend, and I will say by day 3, I was up there at the stage dancing like a lunatic because the experience that I had was phenomenal. He educated, he explained, he exampled, and then he had us all practice. And essentially the practice was close your eyes and meditate. And that experience meditating with 1,400 people in a room for me was eye-opening, because I realized the energetic connection between everyone is profound. And I know corporate environments have been built in a certain way to go, what is your CV? What are your skills? This is the job. But we have so much more than that. So I guess my question is, if we're way more than skills or experience, then what can educators do in the workplace? So if a company brings in an educator, what can we do to help those employees or lifelong learners really tap into their potential as to who they are?
I just think, I'm going to sound like I've got a massive ego, but I'm going to say this out loud. A lot of the feedback I get is, I hate training. And I wouldn't say I'm a trainer, but a lot of the time it gets badged as training. I hate training. I don't know what this is, but I loved it. And they go out excited, and I get really excited messages following up going, oh, I tried that thing. And it's like, how do we just get them excited? Just get them excited, because a lot of people are tired, overworked, How do we create that? And this is where at the minute I'm really doubling down on being in person. And again, I love online. I work fully remote. But actually, if we can spend a day in person, I feel like we move the dial, or actually over a period as well, even better. So if I worked with the Scottish Digital Academy with senior leaders, and now I'm working with the Welsh government, again, very similar. So it's sort of similar courses, and we do 2 days in person, bit online, 2 days in person. And I love it because they don't know each other when they first walk in the room. And by the end of day 2, they know each other. They've spoken to pretty much everybody. And there's sort of like create friction in that space. And that's sort of like that movement and that just being excited, but having the permission to step out of their busy lives and sort of turn off. Because I feel like when you're online, and I'm a learning designer, I do this, I still check Slack. I'm still doing a little few things on the side because it's there in front of you. I'm going to admit, I've got Slack open there. I can see it. And as soon as the message thing goes in, I know my brain's going, what's that? But it's that sort of like that beautiful moment of being in a room, being radically human. And this is where the most important thing for me is creating a space that they feel brave in. They feel. So psychological safety, buzzword, but I love it. I'm 100% behind it. I cannot give that room. I hate it. One of my pet hates is when somebody walks in and goes, we're in a psychological safe space. Are we? Are we really? Do you know everybody? Do you know how I've just had an argument in the corridor with the other? You're not. But if you talk about it, call it out and go, like, I want to create a brave space with you. And it's that lovely sort of like, right, we're in this together. I will always do the most ridiculous thing in the room. You can rely on me to do that. I trip over wires and sort of I will ask odd questions, need to be what I want to see in that room. But I think that's something, it's that brave space where they can learn, where they can take considered risks and not think they're going to get sort of stomped on, where actually everybody's voice is important. It's room over role. It's the room's voice, not the role that's like, well, I know best because I'm a grade. Yeah, I just think there's so much in there. I'm also, you sort of mentioned about that sort of that rush, that like, continually having to work. And I think it's a Navy SEALs thing that I really love. It's like, go slow to go fast. We're all going so fast, we're going slow. What we need to do is go slow so we can speed up. And again, this is where upskilling, students, mentoring, actually creating that space to talk, to be humans, to put different perspectives into the room. And yeah, it's sort of go up together rather than somebody's come from a really privileged point past and can run up that hill really fast and screw everybody at the bottom.
I think it's actually as well companies, they know they have a problem in terms of, this gap of their workforce and automation and how do we augment. So let's call it, there's like a skills AI gap, but there's nearly an ignorance to, well, we don't have time to actually stop and analyze what does our workforce need? And because that's not happening, it's getting to a point now where, as we mentioned, like redundancies are coming. And then in that scenario, it's, well, what data do you decide? Is it last in, first out? Is it the poor performers? But the poor performer might have the perfect human skills that your organization will need in 6 months' time. So I think my ask to organizations and leaders that are listening today, and it is a plug for the sponsor of the business that I'm CEO of, but it's just pause and do that audit, do that assessment and see what people really need. Or as you were saying, Tash, actually ask the young people coming in, because they have access to the LLM, which has given you and I the knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowledge is now in the LLM, but they bring a whole new, fresh perspective. So for leaders listening today, that would be my recommendation. Would there be anything else that you would say to them in terms of, like, they might be at this point buying, the big, is it called a MOOC, online learning courses, and just saying, here's 1,000 courses, figure it out.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Not everybody learns that well in that way. I think the percentage has gone up, but it used to be something like there was a 6% completion rate on online courses. And, even at our organization, we have you have to do this course and then you have to sit and just do this thing that you are just going to tick a box. All I learn, well, it's if you spoon feed people, all they learn is the shape of the spoon. And I feel a bit like, I've learned the shape of the spoon. Ask me a question, I won't know any of that, but I've ticked the box that I've taken that training, and I see that quite a lot. So but equally, I do top up with online learning, and sort of like, I love a little bit of online learning, but I do think there's value in that, but different people learn in different ways. And how do we sort of learn as a collective? I wrote a piece recently called The Missing Bar, Why We Need X-Shaped People. So it's sort of a little bit like, we've T-shaped ourselves to death. And actually the X bit is it's like the relational, it's the person, it's the sort of, because it's, all of those things are like, your core skill set, you're this, you're that. There's never anything about you as a human and how you navigate those spaces. And like when those redundancies, and I've seen this happen, sort of like when I was back at the uni, there was this huge round of redundancies. And a few people went, and I went, you have done a bad thing there because you don't realize that person was the sticky person. And they were like the emotional glue between all of the different people in the different places. And they took them out because they didn't tick those boxes, but they did have a huge, huge impact on our sort of like space. They were that sticky emotional glue that was all over the space. It's that weak ties, strong ties, those quieter people who don't shout about what they do, but sort of make this incredible difference and sort of are supporting so many of I'm a loud person. Yeah, I get noticed because I'm loud. I'm not the brightest. I'm not the best at what I do, but there are loads and loads of people that I will completely champion because they help. They are constantly going, Tash, do you need this? And I can't be me without the absolute support and sort of like working with them. And I think that's the thing. It gets really overseen, all the ties. I did a post on cheese toasties. Bear with me. Cheese toasties, you've got the structure, and that's the sort of like all of the business stuff. The business stuff is important. And you need OKRs and all the stuff that a lot of people are like, oh, don't want to do that. But that's really important. It's really, really important. Policies, The melty cheese in the middle is the people, it's the networks, it's the system, it's the sort of like people who sort of like glue it all together. That's what makes the cheese toasty. Without it, it's two just dry pieces of bread and they fall apart. And I think it's that sort of, how do we keep remembering that cheese in the middle? We are the cheese. Don't micromanage the cheese.
Before I go and make myself a toasted cheese, tell me that I want one. We have a closing tradition on the podcast to ask 2 questions, but you only have to answer one.
Cool.
Question 1, is there a skill that you had when you're younger that you don't use anymore? And if so, why? And you'd like to reuse it again? Or 2, if you are someone who's hit a bit of bad luck in terms of being made redundant, or you're starting out and finding it a bit hard, is there a skill that you think is definitely one they should go and try and acquire?
I'm going to go for the second one. So before we started this, I was talking about responsibility and the responsibility of the organizations to set realistic expectations, paid entry points, practice standards, not to expect unicorns. Then there's education, unis, sort of what the fundamentals, creativity. So sort of like we need that head in the clouds thinking, feet on the floor. I would say that's one thing for the sort of like 4 skills up and skilling up, etc. Confidence, sort of like how do we help people feel confident? It's not just about your portfolio. How do you get multidisciplinary sort of like experience as well? But for the people that you were speaking about, sort of like, okay, I feel like I've been made redundant, or I feel like that's coming. Sort of think about your power and influence. It's a bit of an odd thing to say. Where can you influence? Where can you have conversations? And I think, and I'm going to default to another person from the academy we ran. Luis is still working with us. Luis really wanted to get onto this academy. There were 10 spaces. I had 500 to 600 applications. And Luis just popped me a note on LinkedIn, went, hi, charmed me a little bit. And I think he fed back on something. So I needed to sort of like tweak it, which is incredible. How's that? I love the guts of this person. And since then, so he's done the academy. He's set up a circle, which is a content design. It's completely separate from us, meetup. So met incredible people, invite speakers. He's gone into universities, done talks. He's written up stuff. He ran part of an on-conference thing. I could list out the million things that he does. And what's super interesting there, and why I've used him as an example, Luis isn't the loudest person in the room. Luis doesn't naturally like doing these things. And he's found the edge of his comfort zone and he's stretched into it. And he's found his way of creating a really, really interesting network. And that is future proofing. I feel like he's future proofing. Actually, he's very passionate about content design and ethics and sort of like equity. And he wants to talk to people who are passionate about that as well. So he's created a community with some other people. And then like, look at that network, look at that spider's web of what's going out. And like, and by the way, Luis, you're not getting made redundant, but like if he ever needs a new role, I think and again, don't leave us, I love you. He's going to walk into something because he's got this beautiful network around him now. And it's like, what does that look like for you? And it could be creating a podcast. People have care and responsibilities. People have X, Y, Z. So sort of like, what does that look like in your world? What's the edge of your comfort zone? Because you're going to have to go outside that comfort zone. I started by doing a drawing a day and I hid my writing behind the drawing. I learned how to draw better. But now I've stepped forward to go, oh, my writing is poor, but I'm going to keep practicing. And I've put it out in the world. Like, that's how I did it. Shake it up a bit. You don't have to do a CV or a portfolio. There's that pull or push. It doesn't need to be a push. CV's a push. What if you did pull? What if you put your thoughts out in the world? And I've seen some incredible, less mature designers in this space writing beautiful stuff. Don't be the person. I've also seen some quite angry posts that are quite blamey. Don't do that. What if? Do those what if posts.
I knew this would be a very special episode. And I think I love how your brain floats. I mean, it really does.
It goes all over the place.
It's wonderful. And I know if you're an educator listening today, I'm sure you feel inspired to go and grab AI and think, okay, no, I'm leading you I'm not fearing you, and I'm going to become an even better, more human educator because you're going to take away every mundane. Or if you're a young person or you've just been made unemployed, it's you're right. Like it's understanding who you are. I love the what if. And then business, okay, you have this responsibility to be human leaders and human organizations and use the AI to evolve to be that. Instead of becoming a B certified corporation, you need to be a human first.
Yeah.
I've really, really enjoyed this interview. But just thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Whether you're leading a business, shaping education, planning your next career move, or just starting out, you're part of a global conversation about how we learn, work, and grow. If you've enjoyed this episode, tap subscribe so you never miss the latest insights. And if you've a moment, leaving a quick rating really helps people find the show. For early access to new episodes, event invitations, and the chance to connect with others driving real change, join the community at globalskillspodcast.com. The future of skills belongs to all of us. Proudly sponsored by Abodu, empowering organisations and educators with world-class skills technology to build a better future for everyone.